everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of Mastering Dungeons, your favorite tabletop role-playing game podcast with all the news and all the game design and all the air guitar from Mr. Teos Abadia. I'm Shawn Merwin. Teos, you're looking chipper. You're looking chipper today.
I am trying to do my part. I know that you've got a cough going on, and so I am injecting energy into this podcast. I'm bringing it. Yeah.
Excellent. I am bringing the loopiness.
Good.
And so I'm not going to say I'm sick as an excuse for why this episode is bad. I'm going to use it like maybe this episode will be really good because filters might be off here, Teos. I don't know.
Oh, my goodness. Well, tell me about your Wizards Overlords. I mean, your weekend.
Mm-hmm. Yes. My weekend was full of the Phil Collins story. We went up to Toronto or Niagara Falls, and I'm not a huge Phil Collins fan, but I appreciate the man's work and I appreciate Genesis. So it was a good show.
Mm-hmm. I bet. Fantastic. Yeah, no, great drummer, great pipes. Yeah, no, I can hear it calling in the air.
Yeah. Tonight. But also, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say I was listening to the podcast that Ben Riggs does where other people talk. And he had Wolfgang Bauer on, and Wolfgang was saying, sort of talking about the industry and how he's not really connected to D&D these days. And kind of like not knowing who the up-and-comers are or anything like that. And he said, well, except I do know that Shawn Merwin and James Hake now work over at Wizards and left Ghostfire, and they've done work for us. And so I just thought that was neat that was like sort of his view into Wizards was you and James, which I think is obviously not the complete picture by any means, but kudos to you because you guys have made such a good impression on it, which is awesome.
Well, hopefully we will make a good impression on everyone. And you know who really makes a good impression on me is our listeners as they send in their emails and their social media posts and their questions. And we have a few good ones today. We'll see how many we can get to. We're going to start with Jacob, who sent us this via our email address, which is masteringdnd@gmail.com. I remembered that off the top of my head. Even though it's right in front of me, I can't really read.
Yeah.
So Jacob asked this. I have the distinct pleasure of running a longer campaign for some lovely players. Naturally, some vibe better than others. As such, these players regularly team up with each other, which makes it so that certain members of the party rarely interact with each other. I was wondering, what are some ways to shake this up? Should I encourage it by telling them to do so? Or is there some sort of fun system, like rolling randomly for whom has to interact with whom for that session? And, this is an interesting question.
Yeah, it is.
Because there really are a lot of ways to do that. But first, I want to ask this question, which I think is the first question we always need to ask ourselves as we try to solve a problem, which is it really a problem? And do we really need to solve it? So if this is just a problem that the characters aren't interacting outside of like working together in combat, I would say, are they working together in combat? If they're still working together in combat, you're 95% of the way fine. So I wouldn't push it too hard. Are the players interacting right with each other? Like outside, is there an awkward social element? That would come into this answer. So as long as there's no actual friction, sometimes letting those sleeping canines not be roused, to mangle a weird old saying, is a good thing.
Yeah.
What do you think?
I mean, it's interesting. I'm trying to, it'd be interesting to see, like, if you could watch a tiny segment of what's going on. But I'm imagining things like, there's a skill challenge, and immediately, like, 3 players go, like, oh, we'll start doing this part of it. And that might leave a few people sort of awkwardly going, well, what should we do then?
Right.
And maybe they do things alone, right? Because they don't immediately gel like this group has gelled. And if it's that sort of thing, then that is sort of important. If you feel like some people are being left out, then absolutely you want to try to help create the bonds that the other group has. Like, there's nothing wrong with a group that's bonding, but if the other groups haven't sort of found their way, if it feels like high school, right? Like when they're being left out or something like that, then you want to find ways to address that for sure. And I do think I've had some groups where at a time it felt like the action was dominated by a couple people working together, and it took a
Yeah.
bit of time for everybody else to get into it.
Yeah. And there will always be that element of different player types interacting in different ways, whether they know each other well or not.
Yeah.
But here's a couple things I would say. If you really think the characters should interact and that the game would be better if they did, I would do this in one of two ways, either backstory integration or what I'll call play integration.
Mm.
Backstory integration is simply that the characters' backstories interweave in some way that will have an effect going forward. And when I say backstory interaction or integration, I don't mean a hostile one where we don't like each other, right? You don't want to add that friction if you're trying to smooth things over. So I would rather have a backstory integration of some shared triumph or shared bond. So, for example, maybe they both helped defeat a force together. There was a war, there was a battle. You were both there. You ran into each other. You had the same mentor. Maybe not at the same time, but something where in the past you can do that, and you can say, "Hey, listen, I want you two, and you two to come up with these sort of backstory integrations. Come up with a place, a person, an event that ties you together. Tell me what that is. And then you, as the game master, can later work that in. So when you say, oh, this mentor that you both had needs help, or this mentor that you both had passes away or is murdered or something, then there's that connection they can make.
Yeah, and I think that
Does that sound good?
Yeah, it does. Those kinds of connections, a lot of times, like if you look at games, they'll say like, put up a question, two people answer it to create a sort of bridge. But that bridge only works if it's the right sort of question that you've asked, and if the setting plays off of it. And it's interesting because that's actually what Daggerheart sort of has on a character sheet. But better is what Daggerheart puts in the world building section, which you and I went over in one of our episodes. And so you could take a look at that if you want. But there's some nice examples there where it sort of says like, okay, my character was thrown out of a kingdom. And then the other character is like, well, I've got this, I forget the exact example, but let's say an evil mage that, killed my father. And what the DM does is say, well, the evil mage is who took over the kingdom. And now you're both really brought in to resolving this backstory. This gives you any number of ways to link things together. And both those players are going to sit up and take notice because it's really impactful. Now, it doesn't have to be that, turned up to 11 kind of thing. But that way that you can, as DM, pick one topic and both are going to react to it is really helpful.
Yeah. So that's backstory integration. Play integration is more active, but can be more fruitful. So as the characters go through a dungeon, maybe they're randomly teleported by pairs to different places. So now these two people who may not ever interact at the table, they have to. And again, you could say, you two are here, you two are here, you two are here. You need to get back together. And it can be as simple as one group is north of this main room, one group is east, and one group is west, and there's a door. And together you have to come up with a way to get through this door. It could be a little puzzle, it could be checks, but talk to each other. Figure out how you're going to do this. You hear from inside the sound of battle. So you have to get through this door. You don't have to send them to different rooms. You don't have to, you could stay right in initiative order. But it just gets them talking to each other rather than talking to their normal chat mates or to you. And so those interactions can then make memories that are just there. Something funny might happen, and they can always go back to, oh, remember how you put your ear up to the door and the door was a mimic? Ha, ha, ha.
Yeah,
that sort of thing.
And it's important to, as DM, always have a good, clear understanding of different ways to slice the player characters, not by killing them. That also is important, but separate topic. But where you could say, okay, like you are a halfling and a gnome, so you've got some sort of hearth type, perhaps common background, or the backstories are similar, or you're both arcane or both divine, or what are these different slices that might bring players together, such that NPC can say, you and you, I need, and it can be different, right? But things like I need arcane knowledge. I want you, the cleric, and you, the sorcerer. Give me advice now. And you're forcing those situations. Same thing as like what you're saying, but non kind of combat, non puzzle, where it's I'm forcing the two of you to work together in this scene, and it's just like kids on a field trip, right? Where like if you always have them with their best buddies, they will not mix. But you give them these opportunities, and they all start finding new friends, and it works out.
Yeah, for sure. So, excellent question. We'll take one more. This one from Dave Clark via Mastodon. Y'all reference D&D Encounters frequently, but never said what it is. Search these days only wants to feed me how to build encounters results, as well as complaint that also doesn't explain what it is. So, Teos, take us through what D&D Encounters was.
Yeah, we've talked about this in a number of ways across episodes, but let me try to kind of frame this as a thing, which is that first we have to begin that there was a previous program called D&D Delve Night, and I leave it as an exercise to anybody who can find the materials from both programs to really ask themselves why one was a wild success and one was not. It's a fun exercise I periodically put my brain through, and it's an interesting one to try to work through. But D&D Delve Night kind of fell flat, didn't really work. And then D&D Encounters came out as its successor, as a store-based organized play program. So unlike Adventurers League, where you can technically play it anywhere, right? At home, at conventions, in a store, you just have to sort of organize it and advance, just follow its rules. D&D Encounters was only for stores. And so it's really meant to bolster play in stores. Each season consisted of several weeks of play, taking place on Wednesdays, across the United States, and even in some other countries, but pretty much in the United States. The first season was called Undermountain Halaster's Lost Apprentice. It had 12 encounters, which was pretty typical. Ran from March to June 2010. So it's a nice chunk of time, right? Allows focus on a topic or a theme. Each week, the encounter was run for that week. So every store is running the exact same encounter, right? That creates community shared experience, talking on forums, things like that. And the encounters would usually run around 45 to 60 minutes to play. Some seasons went longer, but that was pretty typical. And this made prep very easy for DMs. Typically, you were looking at a 2-page spread, maybe 4, in large font with pictures. So it was very easy to run. I would often, jump on the treadmill, read over it, and spend the majority of that time just thinking about anything I wanted to tweak, because reading it took no time at all. The program provided a kit to every store, with the adventure exclusive to encounters, which made it relatively rare and collectible. We've talked about some of those problems there. They provided color pre-gen cards, laminated kind of half-page cards, color poster battle maps, PC and DM minis, and much more. A big part of it was community. The fact that everybody was playing on Wednesday created a sense of togetherness. It got people talking about the program. Players and DMs would discuss the current and next week on forums. There was collaboration and shared, I can't believe everybody, saw, Castry killed on week 1 because the adventure said to target them. That was a thing. The Wizards of the Coast Twitter account back then would post special benefits to players and ask questions about how you were doing. And so sometimes players were even following that to kind of comment on to see if there was some sort of boost that everybody got. Everybody gets, a reroll or something. The program was very heavily promoted, with store locators being retooled on the website to specifically show the stores that were participating in the program. And it was so good that, honestly, that search kept working for years, even though the program had ended. Yeah. And as we mentioned last week, hugely important, the Wizards Play Network, which is this larger organized play system used for Magic the Gathering and any kind of store events from the Wizard side, it rewarded stores with bonus WPN points for running encounters. And this impacts how you can sell Magic the Gathering. So huge incentive.
Which is the gold standard for game stores.
Yeah.
And the program really tried to make everything as easy as possible for the store, for the DM, and for the players. Players or even DMs could drop in or drop out because the encounters were so short, generally 1 page, maybe 2 at the most. There were 19 overall seasons, although the 19th season was sort of something else entirely. So the 18th season was called Dead and Thay, and it ended in July of 2014. So we had a good 4-year run from 2010 to
Yeah.
2014. After that, the stores would receive previews of the hardback adventures like Hoard of the Dragon Queen. And eventually the program just stopped existing formally, although it really ended after Dead and Thay.
Yeah. Yeah. And we've included some links in the show notes for those who are Patreon backers that provide a lot of information. You can see what every season was through an old Ian World thread that I wrote up. You can see the different, like a DM's Guild example where Shannon Applecline writes about the history and many other things. It was a fascinating program, and worth noting that it's begun to sort of appear in the wild. These pictures of people at gaming stores playtesting something, and the words D&D Encounters have been used. So maybe, stay tuned, we'll see the next iteration of the program. That would be pretty cool. Nothing official has come out, but apparently those people were not under NDA and were able to say, we play tested a store thing called D&D Encounters. Is it the same? Who knows, right? Sometimes names are reappropriated. We'll have to look at how that comes out. But that would be really exciting because I think it's badly, like sorely needed for stores to have a program like this again.
Teos and I both took part in this in various ways. Teos, I know, travels the country sometimes for work, or did at that point. And so you were getting your D&D fix at random stores in random cities as you traveled. And I am from a very small rural area. It takes me an hour to get to Buffalo, hour to get to Erie, hour to get to Jamestown, where there are actual real game stores. But even the small game store that opened in my town ran this, and I got to run it for players locally or travel to other places to play. And the communities that were grown were strong and ended up turning into great adventurers league communities in some cases, or became the basis for some really good home groups in other cases.
Yeah, fantastic program. I think we are still seeing the benefits today, which is a kind of unbelievable for a program.
For sure. More questions, but we'll get to those next week as we dive headlong into our news and commentary section. And we've got some Hasbro earnings calls and investor calls, and that means Teos is going to take over from here.
Well, this is the Hasbro Q4 earnings report. So that means we not only get to see how the holiday quarter did, but also get the full picture for 2025. Overall, this is a year that's way better than 2024, but that's a really low bar. I think everybody on the team from Hasbro tried to make this sound really amazingly positive. And it's not that it's not, it's a 30% better year for Hasbro, or quarter, I should say, quarter to quarter. But it's still shaky in a number of ways, as we'll talk about. So let's get into Hasbro itself. So total quarterly revenue for Q4 was up 31% to $1.45 billion for the quarter. That's a change of 31% positive from previous quarter. This was driven by, can anyone guess it? Yes, you're right. It's Magic the Gathering. Good job. Good job, everybody at home. Operating profit was $298 million. So that's, one way of looking at what's left. The other way is net earnings, which is $202 million. Now, that is much better than the losses they had for the previous Q4. For the year, 2025 has net revenue of $4.7 billion. So that's the number for how big Hasbro is, with operating profit of, Shawn, what do you think the profit should be on $4.7 billion? Because it is $11 million.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that hurts a lot.
That's a lot of operating costs. Yeah,
and losses in different segments and things like that. Yeah. That is 98% lower than in 2024. So while revenue may have gone up, a lot of things are not working well inside that to just end up with 11 million for all that work, right? It's like if you spent all day digging a ditch and at the end of it, you've got a small bucket, right? So what did I work all day for? Net earnings were a loss of 322 million. So That's your operating profit versus net earnings. For their quarter 4 highlights, they had a couple of things on. They always have something on a slide, pictures, graphics, things like that. And D&D got to mention only through the Warlock D&D video game that was captured on there, and from Invoke Studios. And then Exodus also had a panel there as something very exciting that they're highlighting for upcoming things. So that was Hasbro. Wizards revenue for Wizards was $630 million, up 86% from the previous year, and driven, of course, by Magic, particularly the Avatar: The Last Airbender set, which they said was the third best set ever after Lord of the Rings and Final Fantasy. And they said Monopoly Go. And I immediately said, are you just saying that, bro, or do you mean it? And Monopoly Go was said to be 168 for the year later on, which I knew had to be lower than D&D's revenues, but D&D gets no mention on the slide. Boo, I say. Monopoly Go is doing, better than expected, and I think they had originally thought this would start fading away as a sort of fad, but it's expected to be 12 to 14 million per month in 2026. Exodus and Warlock launch in 2027. And I think it's worth stopping and mentioning, Shawn, that this Universes Beyond approach has been great for Magic, right? This is where they go out to licenses and bring them in and make, a card set. And not everything has been great. Spider-Man didn't take off. I don't know why. But, Avatar: The Last Airbender was huge. It's contributed to a lot of growth, even though you have much higher license costs or sharing your revenue on those sets. They've also had the Secret Lair sales site, and that has made more and more money. Often it's licensed, right? They have Iron Maiden cards. They just had a D&D set last week. So Secret Lair had its best year ever. Thoughts so far, Shawn?
Nothing that is out of the ordinary. We've seen Magic be the driver for so much. So no surprise yet.
Yeah, it is so firmly so. And you and I have been doing these for a long time. It didn't used to be that way. So it really is an impressive change. Wizards operating profit is $284 million. So that's much better for when you look at their, it's like a 48%, it's high 40s that they get to keep percentage of their revenue. Consumer products had only 51 million. Compare that operating profit. Tariffs were given a reason. Consumer products is toys, along with just lower sales. They also had tariffs. We'll talk a little bit about tariffs in a bit. 37 million in losses from the entertainment and corporate sides put together. For the year 2025, Wizards has revenue of 2.187 billion, operating profit of 1 billion. No other segment had a positive operating profit for the year. Toys lost 943 million, and here's those tariffs. Tariffs are said to be a 70 million impact for all of 2025. And that's interesting because there was also like a write-off at one point. So I don't know how that had been a bigger number than this. So, taxes are complicated or earnings reports are complicated. Tariff costs are expected to remain flat to higher in 2026. Wizards revenue growth comes overwhelmingly from the segment called Wizards Tabletop. Very small growth from digital licensing. I thought that was interesting. This is just residual. They're looking for the next thing that will be a Monopoly Go, right? Everything else is not growing. Hasbro Gaming, which includes Hasbro Gaming, D&D, Magic the Gathering, and all gaming revenue was 867.8 million compared to Magic the Gathering being 502 million. So D&D is somewhere in that, 365 million or so, right? In Q4 tabletop, this is Magic the Gathering and D&D together, was 494.7 million. So that is non-digital Magic and D&D. Digital and licensed gaming was 135.7 million. So those numbers kind of give you perspectives on different parts of the Wizards equation. For all of 2025, tabletop was 1.7 billion. Digital and license was 500 million. So as much as they love to tout Monopoly Go or whatever, the money is really coming from this other side. For 2025, Hasbro total gaming was 2.8 billion, and Magic the Gathering was 1.7 billion. A slide on Magic the Gathering's upcoming 2026 sets compared to 2025 included some demographics. The average tabletop player is 35 years old. Average tenure is 5+ years. And the Wizards Play Network has more than 10,000 stores, which is pretty impressive. There are over 1 million unique players in organized play in 2025, and that is more than 20% year-over-year growth. So more players coming into the Magic the Gathering play system, which is great news for all around.
Yep. They also announced some partnerships that included Voltron, Street Fighter, K-pop Demon Hunters, and what has been discussed across social media all week, the Harry Potter partnership. Now, calls being made to Hasbro and staff are saying that the partnership is not in Magic the Gathering. The execution of these new partners is expected in 2026 and 2027. The Harry Potter license is said to be the primary toy license for the world of Harry Potter and the upcoming HBO Harry Potter series. Voltron and Street Fighter are also based on upcoming entertainment.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's always tough, like what to do with boycotts. And I'm very pro taking action against things that you don't like, right? I still do not buy Exxon gas, right? They lost me when I was in high school, and I'm a little older than that. But at the same time, it is really complicated with today's companies. It's not as clear as it is with something like Exxon. Where should you be showing, speaking with your dollar, for example, or speaking up even online? D&D, which is part of Wizards, which is part of Hasbro, and Hasbro's toy segment is doing a deal with Harry Potter. I mean, don't get me started on how despicable things are on that area, but like, I don't know that not buying D&D does anything, right? Like it's a strange thing. But it is never bad to call companies and let them know how you feel about their partnerships. I would just be careful about assuming that you can just block, say, that by not going to a Penny Arcade convention, you are somehow sending a message 3 steps up and 1 over to a conglomerate they're part of that owns a different thing, right? It's difficult.
Right.
It's just a challenge. And so there's room there for nuance. Think about that. And the other really important thing is just never take it out on staff, because staff are probably feeling a lot like you are and trying to do their part, and you yelling at them online will never help situations.
For sure. So let's talk about the earnings call that was going on this weekend.
Yeah, so each of these, quarters comes with presentations, slides, and then a kind of back and forth. Well, first a talk and then a back and forth question and answer session. So in talking about the K-pop Demon Hunters license, they said, quote, exciting new role play, interactive plush, and games coming over the next few months. So again, that role play is used. Is that inside the Wizards team? Is that D&D based? We have no idea. None of the other partnerships mentioned role play. Talking about Wizards of the Coast video game projects, they pointed to that trailer for Warlock and said the trailer, along with the trailer for Exodus, have been viewed more than 100 million times. So, clearly a lot of energy and excitement there. And a general comment on D&D having major category expansions coming later this year, alongside continued growth on D&D Beyond. So, you tell me what a category expansion is, but stuff's coming out for D&D is maybe the only conclusion we can draw, which we knew. They also mentioned the HBO Baldur's Gate 3 show and basically all the things we talked about last week. Those got reiterated on the call because it's obviously very exciting. So nice to see D&D mentions. We've had a few quarters where there's been very little mention of D&D, and this had the kind of mention you do when something is stable and good, not a flash in the pan, which is my favorite kind of mention.
And then we come to the AI portion of our show, because CEO Chris Cox always has something to say about AI. And in this case, it was this. Before I close, I want to address AI and how we're using it at Hasbro. We're taking a human-centric, creator-led approach. AI is a tool that helps our teams move faster and focus on higher value work. But people make the decisions and people own the creative outcomes. Teams also have choice in how they use it, including not to use it at all when it doesn't fit the work or the brand. Over the next year, we anticipate these workflows will free up more than 1 million hours of lower value work. In toys, AI-assisted design paired with 3D printing has fundamentally improved our process. We've reduced time from concept to physical prototype by roughly 80%, enabling faster iteration and more experimentation. With human judgment, human craft determines what ultimately gets selected and turned into a final product. We believe the winners in AI will be companies that combine deep IP, creative talent, and disciplined deployment.
I mean, that's probably, Shawn, as good a quote as we could have hoped from someone who constantly talks about how everybody in their D&D group uses AI and how wonderful it is. Because maybe this opens a window towards exactly what he said, disciplined deployment. When you're playing at these levels where you feel like you must do whatever everybody else is talking about, so that you are a stock on the rise or whatever. Good that he could say the teams have the freedom to say, we don't want to do that here. And so hopefully the Wizards team can be clever enough to go, this will really hurt us in this space. And also our IPs, kind of like the way that Games Workshop did recently, of saying, our games are built on creativity. They're built on the human experience. This is what makes them awesome. Automating them will just cheapen that, right? And remove their value from them. So hopefully they're seeing that within the Wizards team. But, we'll have to see over time.
Yep. And then there was a Q&A section. And what stood out for you in that Q&A on this investor call?
Yeah, there was a question about what Hasbro offers to partners, and Chris Cox gave a high-level answer about Hasbro focusing on a lifetime of play, starting engaging really young kids, carrying through a person's life, emphasis on multi-generational and lifelong engagement with a brand, brands that are for kids, for collectors, and that there was a quote there about executing this playbook on Magic and, quote, on Dungeons and Dragons, quote, and on toys. So, including D&D in that mix, as I'm sure Chris, a benefit is Chris, as a lifelong D&D player, can speak to that, right? He can see how it changes your life. Responding to a question about first-party products versus licensing deals, Chris Cox pointed to D&D as the second example after Magic the Gathering. I think Magic is going to do pretty well. I think D&D is going to do pretty well as well. So maybe that removes a little emphasis from licensing. I mean, one of the questions I always have is, will they try to do Universes Beyond with D&D? We've talked about that before on the show, but no mention there. And they talked again about the top 20% of households. So there's this quote, right now we continue to see kind of a tale of two cities. The top 20% of households in terms of wealth are really driving a lot of demand and are staying pretty resilient. The lower quintiles of kind of wealth and income, their pennies are pinched. And so we're trying to appeal to both. And that we had heard that before, offering premium products to one part of your demographic and really low, easy access to others. And I think we're seeing that a lot in our industry, in the hobby, right? As a large, we're seeing MCDM doing that. We're seeing Numenera, right? I was looking at the Numenera Kickstarter for the reissue of their game, which I really want to back, but they separated their setting rules from the core rules, so you now need both, and I hate that. I'm not a fan of that, having done that with Savage Worlds. But in that Kickstarter, the number one thing that people are the most popular category is the most expensive selection in that backer kit. And that's starting to happen a lot, right? Where you have a lot of people paying at a high level, which is what's really kind of allowing your company to exist, and then the smaller level. So maybe someday we can have somebody on the show to talk about that, because I think it's a really interesting topic.
Yeah, it's interesting in a way that digital can help bridge that gap to give people access to things at a very low cost or free.
Yeah.
Through a digital means, and then give some of the more expensive things to make, target that in a different place.
Yep, absolutely. So we can get to our final question here, Shawn, of how big D&D is. And this is, again, with our friend Scipio, who runs the numbers for us. And he and I had worked on sort of these two different ways to do it. Full details are in our show notes, but basically the two different ways we look at the number. One is through the earnings slide deck that has certain numbers stated. And we can look at that licensing portion and take it out, or we can use the direct statements of licensing revenue in the earnings call, but those aren't always reported and they're not talking about every single segment. So either way, it's imperfect, But our hope is that as we go year to year, we have a consistent way of at least knowing the up and down, and that we're hopefully somewhere in the ballpark. So if we look at the fourth quarter, our estimate with the waterfall is 71.4 million, which is down year to year about 5 million. But it's up before the days before 2024 D&D had been launched. And if we look at the calls-based estimate for Q4, that's 86 million, so a bit higher there. And that would be up 0.9 million year to year from our previous estimate using this method. Also up since before the 2024 era of D&D. If we do the waterfall estimate for the full year of 2025, we come up with D&D in the year having 273.2 million. If we do it the calls-based method, it's 296.8 million. So that's kind of your range of what we're estimating. D&D is somewhere between 273 for the year to 296, 300, call it. And this is all showing that, essentially some growth for D&D 2024. Now, we're not seeing signs that 2024 is causing an enormous growth, right? But we also didn't see it at this point in time in 2014, right? 2015 was not a year that surprised everybody. It was 2016, I think, where Mike Merles talks about suddenly, this hockey puck shaped, sudden climb up in the charts. So it'll be interesting to see whether that can happen. I will say that this was the first Winter Fantasy. We talked about this last year, Winter Fantasy. People didn't know how to run 2024 characters. They weren't super using the rules. This year, people knew the rules at my tables. They were talking about the rules. I saw people, really embracing that 2024 change and play. The adventures mentioned it, all of that. Like the language was there. So maybe we'll start seeing more excitement because of that. Who knows? We'll see.
Yeah, I think the takeaway here is that using either estimate for the year, it's up, and it might be up a little over 1% or up as high as 4.5%. So the cries that 2024 sales are way down is wrong.
Yep.
And it may not be as high as a new edition would have been, but it is still on the upward level compared to the previous years.
Yeah, that's right. And ideally you'd want to say, well, you've got all of your 2014 stuff is selling like gangbusters and the new edition is rolling off the shelves. But we're not seeing that level of explosive growth, at least from these ways of trying to measure it.
Cool. MCDM has celebrated Valentine's Day with a Dark Heart of the Wood adventure. Draw Steel fans who backed the Crack the Sun project on Backer Kit have received the latest Draw Steel adventure. The Dark Heart of the Wood is a second-level Draw Steel quest for 3 to 6 heroes. The quest is intended to be 1 or 2 sessions. It's a Monster of the Week style adventure. Memorable, early stepping stone in the hero's career. They can expect to earn 4 to 7 victories across the course of this quest. You can also get it on the MCDM shop.
Yeah, and really cool. It's sort of that model we talked about where you could have spent a ton on the Crack the Sun Kickstarter to then receive this in your inbox. You could also have backed the Patreon, and you'll eventually get a copy based on how long you've backed the Patreon. You'll get a discount code sent to you. So there are different ways that you can get MCDM, or you can simply buy it on the shop because you're like, I want this one adventure, and I'm paying a one-shot fee to get it. So it's an interesting way that they do that.
Yep. So it's out there if you are interested in Draw Steel. We now know something that we've always known. It's that D&D has great therapeutic potential. And we get this not in 1, not in 2, but in 3 different articles talking about how D&D helps with mental health and recovery. First, NPR has a 4-minute segment on Dungeons & Dragons, long played for fun, being explored for therapeutic potential. What is talked about in this one, Teos?
Yeah, so even this one of the 3 has its own 3 examples they show. Speech and language pathologist Jenny Seiler runs therapeutic games for kids with autism and ADHD. She tweaked the mechanics to address the kids' communication goals, so things like monsters are defeated when you describe them or when you self-advocate. The article then shares how Seth Dellinger, Marine Corps combat veteran helps a veteran group work through PTSD. The characters act as proxies to work through the trauma they have. So it's a very like combat intense, and then work through the situation while you're playing. And then a group called Geek Therapeutics offers a 9-week training class for DMs to run therapeutic games. They have graduated over 2,000 students through this 9-week training class. Amazing. So link in our show notes to that NPR article. And then at vegoutmag.com, an article, or I guess it's vegoutmag.com, an article on how playing Dungeons & Dragons boosts brain function. A 2024 study finds significant decreases in depression, stress, and anxiety, alongside notable increases in self-esteem and self-efficacy. These improvements persisted even at a 1-month follow-up, suggesting lasting psychological benefits. Beyond the mental health benefits, the game appears to enhance several crucial cognitive functions, executive function skills, working memory, strategic planning, cognitive flexibility. Doing D&D also was found to boost higher creativity in players compared to non-players.
Yep. And then there was an article in the Orlando VA using tabletop gaming to build connections. So this is a Veterans Administration program launched in 2023 called Reveal, Reimagining Veterans' Emotions, Actions, and Life Skills. And it uses D&D to promote teamwork, communication, and problem solving without the pressures of traditional therapy. To quote one of the people involved, tabletop role-playing allows veterans to practice skills like anger management, empathy, and decision-making in a natural way. It's authentic, it's engaging, and it meets veterans where they are. So we love to see more and more recognition about role-playing in general and D&D specifically, in terms of brain health, brain growth, mental health, and so on.
Yep. Wonderful.
And what's going on in Portland, Teos?
Oh,
because we know we love our Portlandia.
We try to keep it weird here, and that includes ways to reject consumerism. So it should not be surprising that this Thanksgiving, the city's Bureau of Planning and Sustainability sent out an email basically saying, here's how to be sustainable with your gifts and ditch the normal things that you're going to give that will just create waste. The first category was entertainment. The second, puzzles and games. The city has the Portland Game Library, which delivers board games, card games, and role-playing games right to your door. It suggested 2 combination restaurant gaming stores that you can go to that have libraries of games you can check out, and then puzzle exchanges and other related services, because nothing says love like games, Shawn.
I agree. And nothing says games like Evil Hat. Evil Hat has the Evil Hat's president, Fred Hicks, has commented on a recent article that described the various sizes and shapes of RPG companies. What did Fred Hicks talk about?
Yeah, so the article had sort of said, hey, there are these tiers of role-playing game publishing groups, right? And like Wizards is enormous, as we've often pointed out, and you have these like smaller sort of tiers. And Fred commented on Evil Hat being used as an example of something sort of, that's not tiny, but it's sort of, smaller than most. And he shared, it prompted him to share additional detail on those assumptions, and we noted some assumptions as well. Scipio was in the comments there trying to correct on Wizards revenue. But Fred said, just to look at 2025, last year our gross income was $1.266 million. About $443,000 of which was crowdfunding, $723,000 from general sales, and $20,000 from other sources like royalties we were owed. That's gross income, though. Our expenses exceeded it, totaling around $1.429 million for a net loss of $162K in 2025. Don't sweat Evil Hat taking that sort of loss. It's normal and healthy, and obviously we're still around and functioning fine. I don't love it, sure, but it also means no real tax burden for the past year, and we operate with a buffer that can absorb that scale of loss if we don't make a habit of it. How do we spend $1.429 million? $111 on marketing, $156K on product development, $112 on operational costs of running the company, $257K on staff, $306K on manufacturing products, mostly books, $339K in royalty payments as owed, $147K on shipping and warehousing. This is for a company that has fewer than 100 physical titles in its catalog, 1 full-time employee, me, about 6 all-year part-timers. Other hires are a bunch of as-needed contractors, editors, artists, etc. Many of our top products are done in partnership as a royalty split deal. And I mean, it's just incredible wealth of information in just a few Bluesky posts. And I tell you, I'd love to see Fred Hicks win a Diana Jones Award for the service he does for this industry with financial transparency.
Seconded. All right, let's get him on the short list there. So all that news, and now we get our creator corner. We're going to start with 9 Worlds one-shot adventure, Bad Blood. A friend of the show, Rudy Chainsaw Basso, shares his and Metamorphic Digital's latest project. Metamorphic is a studio known for VTT conversions, but also provides their own setting called 9 Worlds. 9 Worlds is a Norse-inspired cyberpunk setting for 5e, for Starfinder 2e, and for Savage Worlds. So that's 3 for the price of 1 there. Yeah. Midgard is a megacity, and the Norse gods are immortals due to high-tech and arcane magic. So then this adventure called Bad Blood, it's available on Drive-Thru RPG. You get a high-stakes 3-act scenario plunging you into the setting, includes 5 pre-generated characters, and is compatible with all 3 systems, including new character rules for all 3 of those systems.
Very cool. And I did get a copy of it and got to page through it, which was shared with me. And it was, really fantastic to look through. Very cool ideas. I love this idea of cyber tech Norse mythology. Mm-hmm. Really cool, neat take on it. Very, very much worth checking out. I'll mention, all of the people mentioned this year in this episode in Creator Corner are people we either know personally or have received something with in the past. So just, always keep that in mind.
Mm-hmm. We get Monsters and More for the Nimble RPG. A friend of the show, Evan Diaz, has a new Kickstarter for his Nimble 5e fast version. Nimble aims to be a faster RPG compatible with any 5e adventures, monsters, and many other aspects of 5e. So in this project, you will get a book with over 200 monsters, loot, subclasses, adventures, and more. It also reprints the core rules of the Nimble RPG. You can get that, but the project ends on March 12th. And what's the final one here, Teos?
Curse of Stoneshatter Tomb for Shadowdark. A friend of the show, Jeff Muller, has a level 2 Shadowdark adventure perfect for a one-shot or a convention play. And I think it is perfect because I actually played this at Gamehole last year. Jeff ran the table. Mike Shea was there. Various members of our Discord. It was a really fun, rollicking table. Curse of the Stoneshatter Tomb includes 2 new monsters, 4 rival crawlers, a new magic item, plot hooks, and more. It's a great adventure that nearly killed my character, and it could probably nearly kill yours.
That's an excellent motto for any product right there. And that was our news and commentary section here on Mastering Dungeons.